So for today's workflow and assignment, I'm going to start by creating a new component. I'm going to select and create a new sketch. Select this plane, and then I'm going to make a silly thing. And a lot of times my workflow, I like to, so that's about the size of the thing I want to make. I like to draw well away from the origin, because and the axes, because I like the control of doing that myself. We'll go ahead and dimension it. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back into that sketch. And I'm going to add another rectangle, R, just a random old rectangle. And then, again, like I said, I like having the control of placing it where I want it. So I'm going to pick up, holding the Shift key. It's not picking up the coincident. There we go. There and there. So now it's constrained there to the bottom. Escape, and then dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension this. Doesn't really matter what it is right now. I'm going to take this, I'm going to call this 0.5, which is way bigger than my cardboard. Now I'm going to edit this dimension here, because I want this to be half the distance of this square. So one thing I could do, because I'm clever with arithmetic, I could just type in 1.5 there, because I know half of 3 is 1.5. The other thing I could do to protect myself from changes down the road is to double click on here, click on this dimension over here, and then put divided by 2 and enter. I see that landed with you. All right, good. So this other dimension, I'm going to come back to this. But I'm just going to leave it right there for right now. Stop sketch. I'm going to extrude. I don't really care what direction I go. And I'm just selecting this part. I'm going to leave this part alone because I want that notch to be in there. And then my distance, I'm going to put 0.5, just so it's easy for me to find later. And now I got this thing. So now I'm going to go up into modify, change parameters. We talked a little bit about this before. I'm going to go find that 0.5. Okay, good. And I'm going to create a user parameter here. And I'm going to call it THK, which is just my shorthand. You can use whatever you want, but that's what I always use for the thickness of my material. And I'm going to enter the expression, somebody can double check me on this, but I believe our cardboard is 0.55 inches in thickness. Anybody who has dial calipers and are close to some of our cardboard can double check. So now I have that user parameter set. I can go in to my 2 areas where the thickness of my material is important and just type THK there, THK there. Okay. And you can see my material has both, the extrusion is both shrunk and this notch has got smaller. So now there's lots of different workflows I could use to create my little cross piece on there. I'm going to, because I want my next piece to be absolutely centered on this other one, I'm going to create a work plane. on this, that is centered on this body. So do that, and I use this one all the time. I'm going to create a midplane. It's going to ask you to select one plane, and then another, and then OK. And you can see it's created a plane in the middle there. That's where I'm going to place my next sketch. But first, I'm going to create a new body, or I'm sorry, a new component. So now you can see that this radio button here is selected. I'm working in this component, and you can get, it's really easy to get confused if you're not paying attention. Sometimes you could be making edits in one area where you think you're working on one component, but you're working on another. Like particularly with sketches, you can start a component and start building some geometry that you can't get to fit how you expect it to, and it's because you're working in the wrong component. So we're in component 2 now. I'm going to hover on that work plane that I created, and let's just try this. Okay, so it's pulled in that work plane, and I'm working on that plane that's in the middle of this other component. I'm just going to draw a couple of rectangles, or just, let's see, how do I want to do this? I'm going to draw one rectangle, and that is R, and it's going to pick up the points from behind it. So that's all that's on this sketch. I'm going to extrude that sketch, and instead of how we have been doing up to now, the one direction, I'm going to go 2 sides symmetric, and then I'm going to enter a distance of 1.5 there, and it's created. Now if we go back and so now I have the whole project selected here. So now you can see that I have this thing that crosses through there. Haven't saved in a while. Chicken experiment. And make sure that it's saved in the project that I expect it to be. Great. So the next thing I'm going to do is finish out this. So now I have just like one piece that goes through, but what I want is like a little half cross joint there. So I'm going to make sure that I am in the this is the active component. I was about to make that mistake again. And create sketch. And go in here, and I'm going to create 2 rectangles. I'm going to pick up that one, and that one. Stop sketch. Extrude. Oops. That guy, and that guy. And now I'm going to, this will be one side, and then I'm going to go to object instead of distance. So I'm going to take it to this plane. So it's always going to be that plane. No math, no values needed. It's just always going to be linked to that top plane. Great. So now I want to go back and edit this component to make this look like something stupid. So I will take I'm going to create another sketch. Why can't I see this sometimes? And I'm not going to be really picky about what I'm doing here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to click maybe the line tool over here and put a beak on here. Don't like what's going on here. Change that. And then I guess this guy should have an eyeball. That. And I'll go ahead and put a terrible Pikachu-like tail.
Yeah. It's a boy.
That's truly awful. All right.
Can he be our cross mascot?
Right.
Oh my God, yes.
So I'm going to extrude. I'm going to pick that up, pick this guy up, pick that one up. Can do the same to object. All right.
Ah.
Lovely. Just lovely. All right.
Why does he, or what happened with the?
With the eyeball?
Was that when you picked up that?
Yeah. So I can go back and I can edit that feature and I think what I would do, just to make things simple, is cheat and change my design. Various ways that I could have solved that, but that was the fastest one. I guess I could put wings on this, but time is short. We can do that later. So, did anybody check the thickness of the plywood? Or the
It's like 4.03 millimeters.
inches, please?
Oh, inches. 0.9, I think.
And to get to the window, the thickness is, we select the plane and then there's a.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, modify,
Modify.
change parameters, and you can set up your works. I'm leaving my computer at like sort of the default settings because I expect that's where most of yours are. But if I was just doing this on my own, I would put change parameters up here where I can click on it all the time because I click on it all the time. But yeah, so click change parameters, and that's where we created that user parameter thickness.
It says 0.1 with a small 500 next to it in inches.
Okay. With a small 500.
Yeah. That's what it gave me.
Where's the piece of cardboard?
There you go. Those are the right pieces, right?
All right.
So you can just download it and make it whatever.
So this is coming in at 0.1555. I guess that was right. So we don't have to modify that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right?
So how do we get this to our laser? The simplest way, and we're going to go through more complicated, more accurate ways that take into account kerf, like we talked about last week. But for this project, we're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to go through a workflow that you're already familiar with. I guess I should have changed that, but my computer's getting a little squirrely on me all of a sudden here. I'm sure none of you have had that experience. It always takes a little while. I always panic like it's locked here, but it just seems to take a while to bring that sheet in. All right,
Yeah, it probably takes a lot of processing power.
to like put a white rectangle in.
Yeah.
Um,
2D images.
Right, exactly. So, but what it's doing, it is, I mean, in its defense, it's creating another whole other file. Making sure this is, the scale is set to 1 to 1. I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to create another base view. And make sure that's there. Change the view to that, to a right or a left. Click OK. So now I can go in and so for this guy, see what happens when I turn that off. It's not what I want. That's what I want. So what I just did is I turned off one of the bodies in that component group. And I'm going to do this, which is why we have to create separate components. There. So that's how you get your vectors for cutting. There are other ways. This is the way, the workflow that's going to be best for our purposes. But I'm going to show you another way real quick here for other situations. So the other thing you can do is you can go to the component, right click, and then oops. Oh, it's the sketch. So you can go, what you have to do is click on here, create sketch, and then I'm pretty sure you need to then project. I'm not going to do anything with that sketch except for save as a DXF. So that's the other way you can get a 2D profile off of something like that. Sometimes the DXF is more, we need that rather than a PDF, but for most things we're just going to want to use this other workflow.
What does a DXF do?
A DXF is like just a basic CAD file.
Okay.
Illustrator can read it, but Illustrator can read PDFs too. So, and some lasers prefer DXFs. Ours won't. Our software doesn't want to have anything to do with them. So now I want to show you one other important thing here. So I'm here. I've got my parts, and of course, if I'm gonna cut this, I don't need all this junk. What if I decide now that I want to cut this out of plywood instead of cardboard, and I want to change the thickness of my material to 3 inches. So splendid. Like my model is updated. It's a little bit thicker. Let's make it a little more obvious here. We want really thick plywood. Okay. Whoa, chunky. All right. So now I go over here, but it's still the old profiles. I forgot to save because these two files are linked. So now I've saved this with the extra thickness, and I go back over here and still the same profiles. But up at the top here, I've got a warning, and down here, there's a warning that the file that this refers to has changed. And to fix that, I update it, and now all my profiles have updated for that different thickness. So I have to go through this whole thing again to get it back to where we want it. Okay. Save. And update. Great. I'm going to output this. And here again, you have other options. You can get a DWG, which is sometimes better. Our laser wants a PDF. And let's see what happens when I do this. All right. So now I have this. I know I have this on my computer, and I think we're ready to take it to the laser. I'm going to pause the screen cap for a second and turn it back on again for that next phase.